welcome to the second of Biz Group's Industry Insight seminars. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Mihir Mukherjee, a very good friend of Biz Group, Vice President of Global Sales at one of our partners, ExperiencePoint. Mihir, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Chris. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, my friend.
Okay, so we've talked about things that the common mistakes that companies are making. What about, a lot of companies have misconceptions around innovation and things like that. Can you think of anyone on top of the examples that you've already shared or companies that you've worked with that you think really do have a true culture of inventiveness, organizations that foster innovation, that actually look at design thinking from a practical level? What do they do differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to use a safe example, which is Disney, and then I'm going to use maybe one that might raise your eyebrows a little bit. Just because I want to show the diametric difference between what you would typically assume an innovative, creative organization like Disney to be doing. And on the other side, you have like a state fund insurance company, which is probably the most unsexy industry. And I still love my customers, by the way, but still the most unsexy industry when you compare it to a Disney of the world, right?
Sure.
So Disney is one of those companies which everybody looks up to for creativity and innovation. And it is amazing the longevity that business has had. What a lot of people don't understand is that there's a pervasive culture of innovation, regardless of whether you're in the creative team or not. So they've built a culture of innovation within their four walls to the point that some programs and mindsets that they have instilled are pervasive across the organization. So they have something called an incubator program. I don't know if you know this about, Chris, but they have an incubator program where they bring people together from all parts of the business with all different levels and skill sets to tackle a specific problem or a challenge set. They give them time, resources, and advice to dig into that problem. And then they come back with an opportunity to present to the leadership team at Disney as to how might a cross-functional team approach this problem. So it seems like a really simple concept, but to put it in practice and to have governance and funding to help support that in an organization takes buy-in at the leadership level, because not just does that create sort of diversity of thought and experience, but it also enables and empowers the members to say that, okay, if we spend this time solving this problem, there's actually an end game to it, which is we get to take it back to the business and then maybe implement it. They also have another program called Entrepreneurs. And what that is basically is it's a Shark-style innovation program where employees get to move outside their comfort zone. They can come and pitch to the executives on an idea that they're doing for seed money. And then if they win that, they get an opportunity to try their idea out at Disney. And so Disney's had some phenomenal ideas come out from that. But as I said, when you talk about innovation and creativity, Disney's probably one of the first few names that come into your mind. On the complete other end of the spectrum, I have a customer who's a state fund insurance company based in Silicon Valley. And one of the challenges they were dealing with was, well, how do we increase our employee engagement? Because of the geographical region that they're in, one of the key areas or aspects that they're focused on is competing for talent with Silicon Valley tech firms. And so with employee engagement becomes so much more critical because if people aren't happy, they have a plethora of jobs to go to. Sure. And so this organization came in with that employee assessment and that employee satisfaction score as the key performance indicator for their business. And over the last 8 months of working with us, they've implemented 15 new processes and they have trained over 90% of their overall workforce. Wow. So you talk about a culture of innovation, 90% of your team and 90% of your staff are trained on design thinking principles. And so they have these ideas of new process improvements and efficiencies coming from all over the place. They've already started implementing 15 new projects this year through the pandemic, and their employee satisfaction and engagement scores are higher than they've ever been. So you don't actually have to be in a creative agency or a creative field to apply design thinking to your work. It could be applied to the most mundane of industries, as long as you have that thought process behind you.
And this is, again, this is one of the beauties and one of the things that I love about this. I come from a design background. So, I've always thought about different ways of doing things and how can we approach things differently. But when you then see that applied and that thought process applied in, as you say, a non-sexy, non-glamorous industry and organization, the benefits are immeasurable in many cases.
That's exactly right.
The next question. I was going to say to you, how does innovation contribute towards the overall end game But I think you've pretty much answered it.
Exactly. I mean, you don't need to come up with something game changing or futuristic necessarily. I mean, of course, if you're Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, I mean, go at it. I mean, I for one, am standing in line for your stuff. But at the end of the day, it could be happening within your business process or your business team, as long as you have that lens of understanding, well, how might you do something different? How might you do something better? And can you have new ideas that can be implemented that actually work to solve a particular problem? Because at the end of the day, the job of a business is to deliver value to its stakeholders, period. So if you're delivering value to the organization, the people, and the society at large, then I would argue that you are a design thinking practitioner. You just don't know it yet. Because when you deliver value, you will invariably deliver business results and impact. And whether that be, your efficiency metrics, your cost metrics, your revenue metrics, at that point in time, that empathy and all the work that you've done translates into the hard metrics that people seem to care about. And that is what the end game with innovation is. It is to give people a realization that focusing on this, on the empathy aspect, on the human-centered design aspect, on looking at problems in a new way, isn't just a people pleaser or a strategy check mark. There's an actual tangible business result for this. McKinsey has said that, based on all organizations that they have polled, design thinking organizations or organizations with a culture of design thinking typically have 10% greater revenue growth than any of their other peers. Now, 10%, right? So that's not.
You can't argue with that, can you?
Exactly. That's not, something to sneeze at. That's very serious business metrics. And, there are a whole bunch of other host metrics around, time to value, new product introduction, customer satisfaction, customer engagement, all the metrics that senior leaders want to track and measure, all get impacted by this process.
It's fascinating stuff. And you can see, in this climate, especially where tough decisions have had to be made and things have accelerated in some cases, you can see exactly why this is something that people should be talking about and thinking about. And absolutely. I mean, I know I came from a background of a very entrepreneurial organization that I was very lucky enough to cut my teeth in. And even as you're saying now, I can think back to a scheme that we had 15 years ago called The Big Idea, where anyone from the organization was invited to come up with ideas, suggestions, whatever silly or far-fetched they may be, and they would all be considered at the same level, and they would be taken further if they thought there was merit in it. And I know people personally who have been very successful as a result of that. It's that kind of spirit of culture and innovation, I guess, that we're really trying to unlock globally.
That's exactly right. I mean, at the end of the day, when you talk about sourcing ideas from all over the place, not all ideas are good ideas, right? Let's be honest about it. But good ideas can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
And so that is why you have these processes in place. And, in my experience, it's always easier to tone down wild ideas than to start with something that's well within your wheelhouse and then try and expand that into something that it isn't. So, getting new ideas is a great way to kickstart that process because it just pushes you outside your comfort zone and puts you in the mind of someone else who's thinking of the same problem, albeit differently.